Amigo.
Hello.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov.
How was your Shabbos?
Shavua Tov, everybody.
Shavua Tov, Doc.
Shavua Tov.
Okay, we're on the Ches. We're going to start on Zainam and Beis near the bottom. Ton Rabbanon. Ein boitkin lo rachama. You don't do bedikas chametz to sunlight. V'lo lo or alavana, not to moonlight. V'lo lo or ha'avuka, not to a torch, which is multiple wicks. For example, we make avdallah on a torch. That's why I got to bring two wicks together. That's an avuka. Rather, we do bedikas chametz ela lo or aner. We do it by candlelight. Mibnei she'or aner yofel b'dika. Rashi says later on, the Gemara will tell us why it's better than a torch. Even though it's a zecher l'davar. I'll bring you a pasuk. Shenemar, Shivas Yomim Se'or Lo Yimotze B'Vatechem. The specific word of Yimotze, find. You have to find you shouldn't find chametz. The Omer by Yosef, when he sent his officers to inspect the backpacks of his brothers, by chapes begadol hechel, that by chipus, by searching, right? The word is chipus. The omer ba'isa yachapes Yisraelim b'neiros, that in the future Hashem is going to search out Yerushalayim for tzaddikim, using the word chipus, and it says neiros. The Omer Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam Chofez Kol Chadrivat. Even one Ner can do chipus properly. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Hi orachama hechidami." When you say you can't inspect by sunlight, so I understand. What are we talking about? Are you talking about like checking out in your courtyard for chametz? Chatzor doesn't require bedika. Mipnei sha'orvin etzricha. You have ravens there. They eat up all the chametz. Ela b'Alexandra. We're talking about like a patio, which doesn't have walls. You have a lot of sunlight. So the Gemara says, "Amarav Alexandra loyra nivdekes." You don't need a candle in an Alexandra because there's so much sunlight. So what are you talking about? Then it says you can't do bedika b'oracham. Lo tzricha. La aruba de b'chader. You're talking about you have a skylight that opens up to a room, and l'chora there you may not use sunlight. What are you talking about? Ila b'chader aruba. If you're talking about inspecting right underneath the skylight, well then that's the same as an Alexandra. I know Alexandra, and we said you're allowed to inspect with that. Ela l'tzdadim. We're talking about like in cracks in the sides where you couldn't use the sunlight, then you'd have to use a candle. You started off by saying you can't use a torch. This is a pasuk in Chavakuk that the Kadosh Baruch was using it like the rays of his hod for tzaddikim. Lama tzaddikim doimi b'pnei hashchina. Even though tzaddikim shine brightly compared to the shchina, kaner b'pnei avuka. And avuka is brighter than a ner. The tzaddikim shine like neiros compared to a torch. And Amar Rava avuka lavdala mitzvah namufchar. In fact, when you make avdala, you should make it with an avuka, which implies that it's better than a candle. It has to do with the physical size of it. A torch is bigger. You can't stick it into cracks and holes looking for chametz. You can stick a candle into that. Razvid gives another reason. A candle shines light in front, but a torch, I guess it shines, there's more backwards shining. High boys for high low boys. You're concerned with a torch, you're gonna light your house on fire. You won't check very well. You won't stick the torch in certain places because you're afraid you're gonna burn down your house. Ravina Amar Hai Marshach Nor Hai Miktif Iktufe. Like a candle is more, it's drawn out better. I guess like a torch flickers, it jumps. So even though it's brighter, it's easier to use a candle for bedika. That's how the Gemara ends up. Then we talked about the Mishnah places that you don't bring chametz in, doesn't need bedika. So kol makom lasuya, what does that come to include? Lasuya hadaton rabbana. You have cracks and holes high up and low down. You're not going to ever put chametz there, so you don't have to check it. The gaga yatzia, it's like a sloped roof of like your backyard garage. But non-slanted roofs, you'd have to check. Gaga migdal, a tower. The roof of the tower doesn't require bedika. The refes bakar, a corral of animals. The luli, like a chicken coop, umakbein, a place where you store your straw. The oitzros yayin, warehouses of wine. The oitzros shemen, and warehouses of oil. Ein tzrichen bedika. See, these are such large places that the waiters don't go into that. That's like, we'll see in your own personal wine cellar, you'll have to check. Because in the middle of a meal, you'll send a waiter down to get you a bottle of wine. But oitzrois are a larger, like, I would say more like commercial warehouses. That we're not talking about where people will go, your waiter serving you dinner is going to go into that carrying a piece of bread, and therefore you'd be concerned you'd have to bedika there. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, mita choylekes b'sochabayis mafsekes, they would use like a sofa or a bed and would divide rooms up by placing in the middle to separate usages of a room. And it's not just a bed, it could be any piece of furniture. Tzricha bedika, so you might put a piece of chametz underneath it. And therefore you need bedika there. So you have a wall, and the wall divides between you and your neighbor. And he has a wall on his side, and you have a wall, and there's a hole in the wall. So each one has to do bedika as far as their arm will go into that hole in the wall. The hashar, any further area, is mevatel belibo. Each one is mevatel, the remaining chametz that's there that he can't reach. A bed that divides a room, like we said, and you've stacked up firewood or stones below. So first of all, kasha mita mita. This bright, Rav Shimon Gamliel says it doesn't need bedika, and previously it says it needs bedika. Kasha chor nachori, and before it said a chor doesn't need bedika. Here it says it needs bedika. If it's high or low, so you're never going to put chametz there. There you don't have to check. If it's middle, so it's like level of your eye, where you might put chametz in such a place, so that place needs bedika. Mita loy kasha. There's no kasha regarding the bed, because hadimidloy hadimitatoy. If the legs of the bed are very high off the ground, and there's room that you could put chametz there, then you'd have to check it. If it's very low to the ground, there's not much distance between the bed and the floor. Therefore, it's not practical that you would have stored chametz there. You don't need to do bedika there. Freit Gemara, bedika. You said before that the warehouses of wine don't need bedika. V'hatani, you have a brayso oitzus yain tzarich bedika, and oitzus shemen ain't tzarich bedika. So there's another brayso that says that an oitzus yain does need bedika. Yes, oitzus shemen don't. So this is a kind of oitzer that the waiters would go in to fill up more wine during the meal. And therefore, since the waiter might have chametz with him, when he goes in there, you'd have to do bedika. So iachi shemenami. So oil is the same thing. Why the waiter might require more oil? Or says no. Shemen yesh keva lachila. Oil, the householders knew exactly how much oil they're going to use in a meal. You're not going to. They knew how much oil. The waiter would go bring the amount of oil. You don't have to go back. Yayin ein keva l'shtia. There's no limit to the wine. You're having a good meal. You're happy. You want more wine. You send the waiter back for wine. The beer, the warehouses of beer that people had in Bavel were like the oitzus yayin, because they drank so much beer that during the meal they would send their waiter back to get more beer, and therefore you'd have to do bedika there. I guess they had like warehouses of fish. And again, those areas didn't need bedika. There's another brayso that says they do need bedika. Loikasha, haberavravi, habezutri. Depends what kind of fish. Big fish and little fish. With little fish, you don't know how much you're going to end up eating. You may have to send your waiter back for more fish. And therefore, there you would need bedika. Amra barachuna, beimilchi beikiri tzarich bedika. These were storehouses of salt and wax. We might need more candles, or we might need more salt. So those places needed bedika because the waiter might have to go in the middle of the meal. Amrav Papa, Beit Sivu, Beitami tzarich bedika. Storehouses for firewood and for dates would require bedika for the same reason. Tana, we learn in the Mishnah. We don't require a person to stick his hand in to a hole in the wall because of danger. Maisakon. He named it Maisakonas Akrav. Why? There might be a scorpion there. So kimishtamish echishtamish. If this is a place that has scorpions, you wouldn't put your food there. So lotzricha de nofal. We're talking about the house had collapsed, and there it might have, there might be a scorpion there. Enough alamali bedika. However, if it's a collapsed house, you don't need bedika. Vatnan chamit shenafal mapoiles. If a house collapsed on chametz, so it's like you destroyed it. Areo kimavuar. So it depends. Depends how deep it is. Whether a dog, more than 3 tfachim, a dog is not going to smell it. So if it's buried more than 3 tfachim, it's considered like as if it's been burned. But if it's within 3 tfachim, that a dog can find it and then drag it out, and you'll see it in the middle of Pesach, that's not good. Okay.
Is that a scientific fact? That sounds okay. We're not sure what a dog can smell, but we know what a dog can smell.
The Chazal understood it to be 3 tfachim. Rashi said, Shlosha tfachim. Kama chapisas hakelev, Shlosha tfachim. I mean, you could certainly do a research a project. You take a dog and put things that he smells more. We're talking about if it's buried. It means he could, if it's open.
No, I understand what it's saying.
He could smell okay. Maybe more than 3 tfachim, but if something is buried, Chazal understood that they wouldn't be able to smell more than 3 tfachim deep buried. So now a more fundamental question, which relates a little bit to our practical lives. Why, if the person was going to do bedikas chametz, are we worried that he's going to get bit by a scorpion? What about shluchei mitzvah einon nizakin? He's doing a mitzvah, and we have a promise that a shliach mitzvah is going to be protected from damage, right? V'amar Rabbi Elazar shluchei mitzvah einon nizakin. Amar Ravashi shema toved lo machad v'asi lo yuni basra, because it could be that he's also looking for a needle besides the chametz, and that part is not a mitzvah. So on that part, that does not put, so if you mix, l'chura, right now the Gemara is holding that if you're combining a mitzvah with non-mitzvah, this promise of ein shluchei mitzvah ein nizakin is not valid.
Ernie, how come the Gemara doesn't answer that basically that there were a lot of scorpions in Eretz Yisrael or in Babel. That's why they're talking like that. So if there are, you can't put yourself in a makom sakana. Shluchei mitzvah is not going to help you. If you drive at 1,000 miles an hour, you can have an accident. And you're
right now, the Havamina of the Gemara is before what you just said. Right now, the Gemara understands that as a shliach mitzvah, you should have been protected from sakana. That's the Havamina right now.
Okay.
We'll see how we end up. But right now, the Gemara is questioning, why should we be concerned by sakana? You're a shliach mitzvah. So the Gemara right now doesn't answer like you. It gives a different teretz. It says maybe you were doing something else, a non-mitzvah act, along with the mitzvah act. And the Gemara's Havamina right now is that when you do a mitzvah along with something else, you're not protected. The Gemara says it's not so. I'll prove to you that when you do a mitzvah and something else, you are protected. Vatanya. Ha'omer sela zulit staka. I'm going to give some staka, but bishvil sheyichya b'ni. You give a reason why you're giving staka. I want my son to heal. Oh, she'eya ben olam haba. You give like a reason. It's not lishma, right? Still says the harezet tzadi gamra. Even though you have a kavana for some kind of schar, it doesn't detract from the fact that you did a mitzvah and you're a tzaddik. We don't say, Rashi says, well, I mean, shemo lishmo oiseh elakayim mitzvahs boyroi shetzival lasot tzedakah. We say that the guy was makayim HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mitzvah, umiskavin af lanas atzmo. And even though his intent is to benefit for himself, either she is kebolam haba or she banav, it means even if you mix in personal things, it's still considered a mitzvah. So the Gemara says, yeah, but because maybe you finished your checking, and then you're gonna do something else, check for the needle, and then you might get damaged. That's the Gemara's first approach. Rav Nachman Yitzchak gives a different teretz. That we're not talking about a scorpion here. We're talking about Yishun Sakonas HaNochri. Uflimohi. This is the sheet of Flimo, the Tanya. Chor sheben Yehudi Lamoy. You have a neighbor, a non-Jew, and you have a hole in the wall between your apartment and his apartment. So we say, Boidik ad mekom sheyadu magas. So you check until as far as your hand can go. And the remainder, the Jew does bittul. You don't check it all because of sakana. My sakana. Because maybe the non-Jew will suspect that you're doing some kind of kishuv. So if it's a place of kishuv, kish tamish, you never would have put chametz there. So Gemara says awesome kishtamish yamama unoira. No, when he put the chametz, there was daylight. It was very light. V'lo ma'asik adaita. There would be no concept of kishuv and acha leile ushragu u'ma'asik adaita. But at night, when he's sticking a candle in there and it's dark, so there he might think there's kishuv. But why should we be concerned that the non-Jew is going to do something to you? You're a shliach mitzvah. So this is Walter. If it's a makom that is shliach sakana, if it's a dangerous place, then you can't rely on shluchei mitzvah and nizakim. And there's a raya for it. Shneimar. Vayomer Shmuel. Shmuel was told by Hashem to go anoint David HaMelech. Mirtz Hashem will get there soon in Navi Shir. He was told to go anoint David HaMelech. Shmuel was afraid of Shaul. Vayomer Shmuel, Echelech v'shama Shaul v'aragoni. Now, why should he be afraid? Hashem sent him. He's a shliach mitzvah. Oh, so you see, it's if there's a hezek, if there's a sakana shliach, and Shaul's presence was a sakana shliach, so he had to be. That's why he was afraid. So, Vayom Hashem eglas baka tiki b'yadech. Hashem said, "Go take a korban with you." So even though there's a tzivu from Hashem, you have to be concerned about a shliach, about a sakana shliach. So that's how the Gemara developed that concept. The first half of meaning the Gemara was not so. Boy, me name Rav. They asked the following question from Rav. Hani bnei be Rav, the students of the yeshiva of Rav, the Dairi Bebaga, they don't live in the city. They live sort of in the fields out of Maul and Mese Kadma v'Chashucha l'Bei Rav. Should they come early in the morning and late at night? There's robbers. Do they have to be worried about that? Amrlu Rav said, "Nasi, let them come. Alive al savari. They should. The responsibility should be on my neck and my head. That means my schusim will protect them." So nasal my. Fine. That's coming to the yeshiva. What about going home? So Rav said, you know what? I don't know. It's a good question. So on this issue, Itmar, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Shluchei mitzvah ena nizakin lo balichosim v'lo b'chazirasim. Shluchei mitzvah, that's why we give shliach mitzvah gel to our friends when they're going to Israel. Because they're protected both on the way there and on the way back. Kiman ki haitana. It's like this time, the Tanya, Isi ben Yedo Omer. Klapei Shamar Torah v'lo yachmod ish etzar tzucha. You're going to go to Aliyas LaRegel 3 times a year. Now, why aren't you afraid that somebody's going to come and steal your land while you're gone? Number one, your cows are out in the field and grazing, and they're not going to be attacked by wild animals. Your chickens are going to run around in the coop, and the weasel will not damage it. So your animals will be protected, even though you're because balod vam kavachomer, it's a kavachomer. Now, a wild animal and weasels, it's their nature to do damage. Yet, Hashem creates a situation that Eina Nizakim, Bnei Adam Shein Darkan Lizok, that regular people, that they're not made to do damage. And in general, we are not damaged by these kind of things. So Allah has come of a comma that will be protected. So fine, that's going to Yerushalayim. What about on the way home? That at the end of Yom Tov, You'll pick up in the morning and you'll go back to your tent. You'll find your homestead safe. Now, if you've already been told that you're going to be protected on the way home, then why did I have to be so? Alachas kama v'kama, they're going to be protected on the way there. So Ravami, koladim sheyesh lo karka oile l'regel. Somebody who has land. That pasuk is ufanisa b'boker b'alachta lo alechos to teach me a different din. That only a person who is landed, who owns property, he has a mitzvah of aliyah l'regel. Shein lo karka ein oile l'regel. He does. It's to come to teach me a din. Amr Rav Avin bar Rav Adam Rav Yitzchak. Mipnei ma ein peros geinus Rab Yushalayim.
Ernie, but I don't think we paskin like that. We don't paskin that anybody who doesn't have Adama is not chayav to be oila leregel. I don't see any halacha on it. I don't see here. But do we paskin like that? I don't think so.
That's a sheet of Ravami. Ravami learned from that pasuk this din.
Yeah, okay, but it's not. We're not. I don't think.
I don't have any halacha here either.
Either. I don't see anything. I mean, it's a sheet of his, but it's okay.
By the way, it could very well be. I will have to look that up in the Rambam.
Yeah, we should look it up.
Yeah, he didn't bring it down. He usually brings it down, but we'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I found it also on the page. I don't see any halacha.
Right. No, he brings that the hole between the Jew and the goy, it doesn't require b'dika because of the sakona. We paskin like plimo.
The sakona, he says there's kishuf.
Right. We paskin like
kishuf. The sakona is you'll think he's doing kishuf there. It's not
right.
No other sakona.
Right. So mipnei ma ein peros geinasar b'Yushalayim. Peros geinasar was very nice fruit that grew up in the Galil near Yam Kinneret. So they asked, how come they didn't? Why don't these fruits grow in Yerushalayim? Because if it would have grown in Yerushalayim, people would have said, if the only reason I came up Aliyah L'Regel is to eat such nice fruit, it's a good reason to come. Hashem didn't want that. Hashem wanted to have people feel good that they come to Yerushalayim without Peros Geinasar. Right? Nimtzas Aliyah Shelo Lishma. It would have led to people coming up Oilei Regel without Lishma. Similar, Amr Abdu Stoy, Rav Yanam B'Nei Ein Chamei Tver Yerushalayim. Why did Hashem place the wonderful hot springs of Chamei Tveria? Why did they do it in Yerushalayim? Today. If the only reason was to take a good schwitz and a good bath in the Chamei Tveria in Yerushalayim, so he left Chamei Tveria and Chamei Tveria. Then the Mishnah had a machlokes about when you inspect. Beis Shammai Beis Hillel had a machlokes when you inspect your wine cellar. How much do you have to inspect? Marteif Mandikav. So first of all, the Mishnah didn't talk about a Marteif, a wine cellar. Where did this come in? So there's some words missing. The Mishnah said, any place that you don't bring chametz, ain't tzrichim bedika. Regular wine and oil warehouses don't need bedika. Is Malcolm Shmachnis and Bocham, it's a mistopic. We're talking about a personal wine cellar that in the middle of the meal you might send your waiter to get more wine. So there you might bring in chametz, and therefore that place requires bedika. These two rows, it was the first two rows from the ground up until the ceiling. It's like a dalid. The gamma, the Greek gamma is like a dalid. So it wasn't just the first two rows, it was also the first two rows on the top. So if you look at it on the side, it looks like a dalid. Tani kavas Rav Yehuda, Tani kavas Rav Yochanan. Tani kavas Rav Yehuda, Beis Shammai Amru Shtei Shus Abdei Kol Amarte, V'Shtei Shus Amru Mina aretz vat shmei kara, from the ground until the ceiling, but only the first 2 rows. So that Baraisa supports Rav Yehuda's understanding of Beis Shammai. Tani kavasi Rav Yochanan. There's a Baraisa that supports Rav Yochanan's view. Shtei shurs al nekol amartev. Chitzon harosa Pesach. The outer ones looking at the door is the first part of the Dalid. Ve'elyon harosa kara. The Dalid part that goes on the ceiling sees the ceiling. But anything below that or inside of that will not require bedika. So that's Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel oimrim. Beis Hillel required less bedika. Shtei shuras achitzoynos shehein elyonis means only the upper ones and the outer ones. Amar Rav elyona v'shalamate it means the top and the one below it. So it means if you had 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, only the top 2 rows would require. Shmuel says you don't go up and down, you go in. The top row and the row inside of it. My time of the Rav, he focuses more on the chitzoinios. It also talks about elyonis. So to exclude the lowest part, right? Row number 1 instead of 2 and 3 require bedika. Row 1 doesn't. Shmuel Amar Elyona, he focused on the upper part. My timer. What about the fact that it says chitzona the outer ones? Because he excludes the 2 bottom ones. Rav Chia Tani Kavos de Rav. Rav Chia learned the Baraisa like Rav. Kula Tanoi Tani Kavos de Shmuel. But all the other Tanoim learned like Shmuel. The Hilchos Kavos de Shmuel. Allah was like Shmuel. Okay. So tomorrow I have to learn after the Navi Shir.